Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Shaylin Stimpson, and I'm the events manager here at Tech Manitoba. Thank you for joining us today for our tech mashup from Startup to Unicorn, Why Cybersecurity Matters. In spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge that Tech Manitoba is located in Winnipeg on the ancestral lands of Treaty 1 territory. This is the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dennehy, and on the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. Tech Manitoba continually seeks to cultivate better relationships with the Indigenous peoples and communities. We seek to make Manitoba's tech sector the most diverse, equitable, and inclusive in Canada. First, I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview of some upcoming events that we have here with Tech Manitoba. So our next Tech Mashup is going to be in January on the 23rd. That one is going to be Unleashing the Power of Gen AI. So same thing, over lunch break here on Remo, we have Tim Siemens, CTO of Online Business Systems, and he's going to take a look at generative AI and how it's transforming enterprise applications. And then in February, we have Manitoba Tech Week. So this is the first time we're doing this, and it's going to repeat every year. So for the full week, we are celebrating our tech ecosystem here in Manitoba. There's tons of different ways to get involved. You can host an event. We just opened up the applications on our website. You can sponsor the week. You can attend the events. You can share the excitement of our tech industry by telling your colleagues, your friends, your family about all the different events that are happening throughout the week. You can find these on the interactive calendar that we have on the website as well. So yeah, make sure you're coming out and supporting and participating. We are kicking off Tech Week with Ignition. So that's going to be on Monday, February 26th at the Delta. Tickets are now on sale. This is an in-person networking and special keynote event. We have Eric Tremonde coming to talk about leadership and AI, building high-performing teams. In a world where technology is evolving rapidly, understanding how to lead a team in the age of AI is crucial. So he's going to cover all of that for us, as well as host a panel presentation too. So moving on to today, I'm excited to welcome Hernan Popp3r. He's the founder and principal consultant at Popp3r Cybersecurity. With 30 plus years of experience advising businesses, small organizations on technology, cost efficiency, and innovation, Hernan Popp3r founded Popp3r Cybersecurity to protect small and medium-sized organizations from today's biggest threat, cybercrime. Hernan has a vast management experience, including Director of Innovation at Western Canada Lottery Corporation, Portfolio Manager at MTS Allstream, and Business Development Manager at Lockheed Martin Global Telecom. So Hernan has a very extensive list of certifications. He's also a cybersecurity instructor at MIT Cyberwave, volunteers regularly at many events from multiple organizations. He holds a degree from Harvard X on cybersecurity and an MBA from the University of Buenos Aires. Please help me welcome Hernan.
Thank you very much. This is absolutely great. So first, let me introduce myself again, Hernan Popp3r, and I have an accent. I know that. I've been in Winnipeg for 20 years, but I still have an accent. So please, if anything is not clear, if I have to repeat, please ask me, please stop me. The idea today is to have a little bit of a discussion about why cybersecurity matters, from startup to unicorn. Of course, not every one of us is going to make it to unicorn, but the idea is, well, why it's important to think about cybersecurity from the get-go. Once again, the idea is to have a discussion, to make it interactive. So I'm going to be checking the Q&As and the chat. Please, if you have any questions, we can cover them during the presentation, or if you prefer just wait till the end, that's okay too. And with that, I'm going to hope that this is actually going to share my screen. Never trust technology. Let's see. Let's see if I can share. Okay, I'm going to share my entire screen, and that should work. So let's get this presentation going, and this should take us there. Okay, so once again, why cybersecurity matters, why you have to start thinking about cybersecurity from the get go, from the moment that you start your business, all the way to when you exit, or when you start growing, or when you actually get to be one of those northern stars, born and raised in Manitoba or anywhere else in the world. So, the agenda today is, of course, a little bit of an introduction. We are going to be covering the key reasons why security matters, the top risks of neglecting security, security best practices, and the key takeaways. Again, we are going to have a Q&As. I just realized that by sharing my full screen, I cannot see Remo. So let's wait for the questions till the end, so I make sure that I don't miss any. And I'm going to be getting some help from Tech Manitoba on the Q&A. So let's start with the introduction. Any one of us, when we think about an idea and when we start actually analyzing it and we start asking our friends or peers or colleagues or mentors, we say, well, this might be the next big idea. And we all start our businesses, our startups, with the idea to, at the end, hopefully, become a unicorn. I'm not saying that every one of us is going to get there. Very few of us is actually going to get there. Actually, the possibilities of becoming a unicorn are kind of similar to the possibilities of winning the Lotto Max. And I know some numbers on the in this area. But hey, someone has to win it. So yes, some of us will become unicorns or will be able to sell our company at the end or grow it to the level that we want. So that's the goal. Now, when we are talking about growing from a startup to a small business to a medium sized enterprise to a large business, we always have to consider the risk of going this way. And as entrepreneurs, we might be passionate about our idea. We might be absolutely pushing forward with a innovation, with new products, with new ways of doing things, but there's always risk. And this is about scaling efficiently while you manage your risk. And then the last piece is why cybersecurity is a strategic priority, and why it needs to be aligned with the business goals and the business strategy. So, I like to do a little bit of an interactive exercise here. If you want to take your phones, I have a couple of questions that I'd love to hear your feedback. Simply scan the QR code. You should be able to get to Slido. If not, you can go to slido.com and enter the PIN number on the screen. Just a couple of questions to kickstart the discussion. I'm going to give another 10 seconds. The QR code is still going to be uh, available on the next slide. Okay, so that's the first question that you should be able to see on your phones. And it's about an incident response plan. Do you have one? If you are a one person shop, a solopreneur, or if you have already 1,000 employees, do you have a plan in place? Okay, I see some answers coming. I'm sharing the answers for the benefit of everyone. So this is actually pretty good. From what I'm seeing here, between yes and kind of, we are over 70%. That's really great. The biggest problem is when we are talking about kind of the moment that we have an incident, if we don't have a plan, or even if we have a plan, but we haven't practiced how to put that incident response plan in place, it's going to be really painful. So, well, now we have an exact tie between the three options. Let's go to the next question. So, this is a little bit more technical. Do all high privilege users, admins, have different passwords for their roles as admins and their roles as regular system users. In other words, for example, if you are on Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, when you have to make a change to any account, do you actually use an admin account other than using your regular uh, user account? Excellent. Well, that's one of the questions that typically small business users they answer what? Like they don't really know what that entails or why that is important. So this is great. Let's jump to the very last one. So that one is fairly simple. Have you ever had a cyber incident? Okay, we have some answers coming in. And if we were to look into those that had one and those that also had, but well, they don't want to disclose it. Everything here is anonymous, of course. We are talking about almost 70% of the people attending this presentation that actually had an incident. And an incident could be anything from a ransomware incident to leaked credentials to an account being hijacked to clicking on a phishing email. So this tells us that it's not just if it's going to happen, the question is when it's going to happen. So thank you for that. That's just to gather a little bit of information from the crowd here. So let's talk about the key reasons why security matters. The one and most important, actually, maybe it's not the most important, but is all of these are really important. But yes, I do want to talk about it. First is you're a startup, or maybe you're a small business, or maybe you're already growing. The most important asset that you have is your intellectual property. That intellectual property is what makes your business unique, is what actually fits the leads funnel. It's what's bringing you business, and it's the most important secret that you may have. Also, your competitive advantage. So that's why we need to think about protecting your intellectual property. Second one would be avoiding a devastating data breach. A data breach could be as simple as someone hijacking, your Facebook for Business account, all the way to losing all your information or all your private personal information being leaked on the dark web. Now, imagine if you're just starting your business, or if you are in this startup or entrepreneur mindset, and there's a leak, and your information gets exfiltrated and you get a ransom request because your information was encrypted. These days, when we are talking about a ransom, it's called a fourth. Uh, my apologies, I'm missing the word. Like it's not just one or two or three, but four times that actually someone could use that against you. The first one is, well, the extortion could be send me half a Bitcoin if you want to get access to your computer again. You send the half a Bitcoin or the $10,000 or whatever they're asking for. Then once you pay, they know that you can pay. So they are going to ask you, send me another, or I'm going to encrypt your backups too if they didn't do it on the first time. Third is we need more. If not, we are going to leak the information that we gather when we breach into your system, your network, your databases. And the fourth is we are going to go after your supply chain, your partners, your vendors. So every time there's another level of extortion. Now, imagine if the information is leaked on the dark web, or if it is known that your company had a breach. What would that cost among your customers? What would that cost about your among your investors, your partners, your supply chain? Next one is to adhere to expanding regulations. Uh, Many of us in a startup world, we are working on areas that are regulated. They could be health, they could be financial, they could be a number of different areas that there are regulations. And you have to adhere to those if you want to be in business. And many of those regulations will require uh, looking into cybersecurity as part of those. And finally, the last key reason is to be able to innovate safely. The startup journey is all about innovation, it's all about new ideas. But at the same time, you cannot risk to start innovating and by doing that, opening attack vectors or actually exposing anything that you're doing just because you're going too fast. So let's talk about each one of those. Top risks of neglecting security. Once again, just think about, I'm going to use a different example than a startup, but a not for profit organization. Let's say that you donate money to X Winnipeg, and X being any of your supported non for profit organizations. What would it happen if you know that someone got into their donors' records, or if they actually had a cyber incident? I'm pretty sure that you would think it twice next time that you are going to give money or volunteer time to this organization. Now, in the startup world, having a brand issue or a reputation damage situation could be the end of it. Like, if you cannot protect your assets, if you cannot protect your information, how would you be able to protect my investment? Or as a client, how would you be able to protect my personal information that I'm giving you for the business? When we are talking about compliance, it's not just about making sure that you are doing everything that has to be done, but if you don't, there could be fines, there could be lawsuits. So it's not just about fulfilling all the requirements from the law, from the regulations, but also avoiding maybe a situation where you actually get sued. And again, that could be the end of the business, big or small. Imagine that you have some IoT devices that you're using on your network, or just your mail server, or your voice over IP server, or any kind of service that you use that could be compromised. Imagine if you have no access to your phones, your emails, your Slack, anything that you use, or if you are using any kind of automation or IoT. Imagine that your manufacturing line is disrupted because someone was able to break into the PLCs that had a default password. What would that cost at your business? Again, at the startup level or all the way to the million or billion-dollar company. Of course, since financial theft and fraud, uh, well, they can go after your money, and that's the easiest one to get after. Like, if they are able to get into any of your systems and they get information about your bank accounts or your billing systems or any other sensitive financial application, well, that could be again the end of it. And of course, imagine if your best kept secret or your intellectual property is leaked. Again, these days, the biggest difference that we have with our competitors, with our startups, with other large companies is our intellectual property, which needs to be protected. So this actually refers to best practices. And I'm going to spend a little of time on this because this is the most important piece that I want you to take away with you after this presentation. So even if you're just a startup and you have an idea and you're working with an incubator and you are at the minimum viable product stage and you are starting to speak with friends and family, maybe to raise a couple of $1,000s to pay for a new computer, from the moment that you have an idea, from the moment that you start thinking about this as a serious business, you need to start thinking about your cybersecurity roadmap. We are going to cover that a little bit later, but a cybersecurity roadmap might be okay, what do I need today? What may I need once I start growing? What do I need once I go live? What do I need once that I start adding clients? What do I need once I'm so successful that I really cannot fulfill all the demand for the service or product that I'm offering? So a roadmap is your plan that will tell you at the different stages of your business, of your startup, this is what you should be doing. Of course, uh, it doesn't need to be an overkill. You don't need to be thinking like $1 billion company if you're just at the ideation stage, but you need to think about cybersecurity at every step of the way. Key cybersecurity best practice is to implement from the get-go access controls and data encryption. Access controls refers to who has access to what. And in many cases, we are in this when we are in this journey of starting a company, growing a company, uh, adding investors, like in this adrenaline of growth. There are some things that are overlooked, and access controls is one of the big ones. Who needs to have access to what? What is really, or who really needs to have the possibility to access this information, this service, this application, this server? And when it comes to data encryption, well, again, someone in a small company may say, well, nobody's going to go after my assets or my data. Still, all the information has to be encrypted from the get go in order to be secure that that information is protected, particularly if you're working in one of those industries, as I mentioned, health, financial, etc. We are very keen on security awareness training, and it used to be called security awareness training. Now it's called human risk management. Actually, that's how I started the practice many years ago. And we all know that you can have the best processes, the best firewall, the best antivirus, and the best backups. But if Joe from accounting clicks on a phishing email, that might be the beginning of a huge event, of a huge situation. And also, it used to be said that the human factor is the weakest factor. That's not exactly how it's seen today in the industry. Today, it's seen that protection on the technology side has grown so much and so rapidly that there is a huge gap between the differences on how you can protect your technology stack and your people stack. So it's not that the user, the human, is the weakest factor. Is that there is not enough yet conscious about the fact that that one needs to be protected, and much more than the technology side of it. If you are going to do any kind of software as a service application, if you're going to run anything online, even if you just have a virtual server on the web for free, you should always be doing vulnerability assessments. And that is my application, is my website, is my web app, is my e-commerce site secure? And what we see typically is that the idea is there, the e-commerce site is implemented, and then, well, it's set on a Linux server that was never updated, or they don't have updates automatic, or maybe they are using WooCommerce because, well, it's a great open source e-commerce site, and they never update it, or they keep adding plugins to their WordPress or any other. So all of these things happen, and if you are not aware that every single piece of software changes and new security issues are found on a daily basis. If you are not checking your applications, your online assets for vulnerabilities, then every day that a new vulnerability is identified, your system, your information, your reputation, your money could be on the line. The last one here is the one from my first question. do create an incident response plan. And again, I'm a startup, like it's three of us, and we work out of a co-working space, or we work from home. We don't need really to be together. And well, we have a minimum viable product, or we have 1,000 people, or we have 5,000. You need to have from the get-go a plan that will tell you what to do if something happens. And that plan needs to be uh, well developed for the stage of your business. Of course, an incident response plan for a startup might be 5 lines. An incident response plan for a said company, a unicorn, might be 50 pages. It might be on a shared drive, or if you're following best practices, it will be printed with a copy outside of your location. But from 3 pages or 3 lines saying, okay, let's think if we were to lose access to X, if we were to have this kind of event, what do we do? How do we fix that? That's an incident response plan. So I think that is always interesting to give some examples on some of the cases that you might see. So I have 4 horror stories that I found. There are hundreds, but these are just 4, and some of those will you will recognize the names. Some of them you have never heard about them. So this is again just 4, and let's talk a little bit about them. So code spaces. Code spaces was a very promising coding startup back in 2014. And well, someone breached into their AWS account and deleted all their data and backups. And that was it. That was the end of code spaces. If you're using any kind of cloud services, do you have the right security requirements in that cloud space? Do you have different admin accounts? Do you use two-factor authentication? Are you using secure two-factor authentication or just an SMS code? Like, there are a lot of things to consider. This is just an interesting example because, well, cloud security, it's a big, big topic. And if you're using cloud, well, I don't know if you've read the terms and conditions, but basically, the cloud vendor is responsible for the infrastructure. You are responsible for the code and whatever you deploy in that infrastructure. So if someone breaks into your AWS, Google, Oracle, you name it, any of those cloud accounts, it's your problem. They are not going to be responsible for it. So again, code spaces, history. Twitch. Well, many of us we know about Twitch. It's still out there. It is huge and it's grown a lot. But back in 2015, it was hacked, and all their account registration data was exfiltrated. So 2014, 2015, this is not really known, but if you had a Twitch account at the time, or if you have a LinkedIn account, was also breached. Like we can have hundreds or thousands of examples of startups and any other companies that actually were breached. Again, Twitch survived, but it was in big, big detriment of their growth as a startup. Panic, well, perfect name. Nobody will remember Panic. This was a software company, and they lost their entire source code in 2019 when someone broke into their systems through a web app. I was talking about vulnerability scans. If you have a web app and you think that you are secure, but you are not doing regular vulnerability assessments, if you've never done a pen test, manual, automatic, anything, if you don't have those mechanisms in place, well, you could be the next Panic. So Panic actually was exploited through their web app, and they got access to their systems, and they deleted the entire source code. So no more Panic, or at least no more company called Panic. And the last one is Canva. Many of us we use Canva for graphic design. Well, Canva had one of the largest breaches in these kind of services. Of course, Canva was a startup, then it grew and it grew and it grew, and they are a multi-million dollar company. But back in 2020, well, they had a major data breach, and 139 million users' records were stolen. So, if you have an account with Canva, that's it. So again, they survived and they are thriving, but they had to learn the hard way. They didn't have all the tools all the tools or solutions in place. They didn't have what it took in order to protect that from happening at the time. So those are just some horror stories. But if you follow anything about cybersecurity, you may have heard that last week, no, Fidelity, sorry, the largest mortgage company in the States, was breached. You may have heard about MGM, the casinos, they were breached. It cost them $100 million. And they have the money to actually protect themselves. Uh, the thing is that when it comes to small businesses, startups, companies at the ideation process, you never hear about them. But if it happens to them, it can be devastating. Now, I want to share one story that I think can really explain uh, how much of a pain situation this could be. A good friend of mine has an entertainment company here in Winnipeg. They actually have escape rooms. They are one of the most successful escape rooms companies here in Winnipeg, and they are exporting escape rooms ready to be set on and explode anywhere in the world. I would say around a year ago, I was contacted by my friend. And one thing I forgot to mention is that their main uh, way to communicate their specials, their offers, promote their services is through their Facebook for Business account. Well, my friend called me crying on the phone. She was down in the States that she couldn't access her personal Facebook account. Long story short, someone actually sent them a phishing message through Facebook, impersonating Facebook, asking for the login credentials. She entered the login credentials. Why not? We, in some cases, we are kicked out of an application. Well, that Facebook personal account was administrator for the Facebook for Business account. It took us approximately 10 days in order to be able to regain control of the full Facebook for Business page. But in the meantime, the criminals were posting things like, sorry guys, we are closing down. And on the other side, they were sending blackmail and extortion messages to this person. So just imagine a small business, maybe 40 employees, and a lot of hopes just shattered because, well, they didn't realize that that was a phishing message through Facebook. So, key takeaways, particularly from the ideation process when you start working on it, when you start building your foundation, always prioritize security from the start. It's not something that you want to leave for when you have time, for when you have money, or for when you hit your milestones. It's something that you need to think from the very first moment that you start thinking about an idea. The next big takeaway is you have to align your security to your business goals. We talked about a cybersecurity roadmap or a plan. You have business goals, and in order to support those and to support your growth and to support your maybe fundraising and to support all the different steps in this adventure of entrepreneurship from startup to unicorn, you need to make sure that you understand the business goals and you align your cybersecurity to those business goals. Again, you don't need to have the most expensive firewall in the world, or you may not need to spend thousands of dollars on a web application firewall. But maybe you start thinking, well, as I'm going to grow my service, my product, my business, this is how my cybersecurity is going to support it. The next one is similarly to the previous one. Well, as you grow, you're going to have more attack vectors, more opportunities for the criminals to actually try to attack your company through technical ways, through social engineering ways, through any technique that they can find. And you will have more and more and more things to protect. And you need to grow that protection as you grow your business. For example, at some moment you will need a payroll system or a bookkeeping application, or maybe you need to start using some kind of internal communication, and you start relying on software as a service, and you start buying services, and then you bring some servers in-house, and then you move those servers to the cloud. Every time that you do any of those different steps, or any other step that you may do during this growth process, you need to think about how is this exposing my business, my intellectual property, my private information for criminals to go after it. In the startup journey, we all know that it is all about innovation, all about finding better ways to do things, new ideas, new processes. uh, but it's always important to know that innovation is key, but it needs to be done in a safe way. Let me give you an example here. When we are working with any company, a solopreneur or a $10,000 organization, we ask a lot of questions. Like typically, we ask between 250 and 300 questions to understand their posture. And these questions are not technical, they are about technology, people, and processes. And one question that we are asking is, do you have a policy for the use of chatbots, AI? And a lot of people, they answer, a policy? No. Do you know if your people is using any kind of AI? Yeah, I know that some people in marketing or some people in engineering or some people, whatever, they are experimenting with it. Okay, no policy and they are already using it. How do you know that information that you are providing to this chatbot, uh, any of them, not just ChatGPT, but any of the different tools that are available today, there are more than 50. How do you know that information that's being fed to the chatbot is not confidential? And I will share another story. I will not mention the name of the person or the name of the company, but the company is one of the largest companies in Canada, and they are in logistics. It's one of the largest transportation company in Canada, and they just expanded to the US. And I think that they paid like $26 billion to buy their competition in the US. To give you an idea of the size of the company. And chatting with a friend of mine who is in charge of a very important area, he had a problem with putting together the calendar for the technicians who took care of some of their vehicles. And he had like 20 technicians in one of the garages, and he was trying to make sure that everyone was available at the time that they were required, that he was honoring the request for not working on Sundays, etc., etc., etc. And there was no AI policy on this organization. And he was very excited, saying that he was able to get some amazing ideas by using ChatGPT. And I asked the question, so what information did you provide? Well, I uploaded my Excel sheet. Okay. Did you remove the names? No. Why? Did you remove your company name? And at that time, his face started getting white. He's a senior manager at this organization. And rapidly, he realized that I was going to explain that all that information now is for anyone to hack from ChatGPT. So these tools, they feed from the information that anyone uploads. And there are a lot of social engineers hacking with AI tools in order to get or to exfiltrate information that should not be exfiltrated, should not be shared. And you'd be surprised if you do a little bit of research just on YouTube. You will see how people is getting crazy amount of confidential information from these tools just by asking the right question. So again, AI always an interesting topic to mention. Again, it's all about innovation. You need to have a policy. And the final one is about leveraging partners or experts, partnering with experts when you need it. No one is supposed to know all the risks, all the regulations, all the challenges that cybersecurity may include when you are on this startup trip or this entrepreneurial trip. Again, solopreneur, just an idea, all the way to $1 billion corporations. There are a lot of experts in the field, many of them here in Manitoba, across Canada, also. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can get help on any of the different areas that you may need support, like when you work with an accounting firm, or you work with an IP lawyer, or you work with an HR expert. Well, again, from startup to unicorn, there are experts out there that can support your adventure as an entrepreneur. So with that, I hope that illustrates a little bit some of the important topics that you should be thinking about from startup to hopefully unicorn. Hopefully, many of us is going to get there. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's jump into Q&A if there are any.
Thank you. That was a very uh, like information packed presentation that you gave. Lots of different details to think about with cybersecurity that I'm sure aren't top of mind for most of us. So very, very insightful. Thank you. It does look like we have quite a few questions here. So I'll start with the ones that have the most votes, just at the top here, and we can go through them. So the first question, I guess, with sort of the startup mindset, if you have limited funds or resources, how do you start prioritizing cybersecurity, and like where should a company start? Like what is the first step?
Perfect. So the first step would be every time that you think about your business plan and the different steps on your business plan, to ask the question, how do we secure this? What do we need to do? What tools, what solutions, what processes do we need? What training do we need at that stage of the game? And that will be your cybersecurity roadmap. And it doesn't require lots of funds or resources. It's just about opening the discussion. Like, okay, we are going to have a minimum viable product in February 2024. What do we need for that? What happens if that web app is compromised? Okay, how do we fix that? And that might be just a free Cloudflare account that, again, is free and takes 2 minutes to implement. Now, what we always explain to anyone who wants to listen, and we are almost like advocates of cybersecurity, we yell out there, please do it, please do it, please do it, because you don't want to go through the pain of a breach. And we've seen that, and we've seen many companies folding because they couldn't survive a breach. So, what we always recommend to any business is to start with a clear assessment on where they stand, to understand exactly what they know and what they don't know. As I mentioned during the presentation, when we do an assessment for any company, for any organization, we ask about technology, of course, but also about people and about processes. Because typically, when people think about cybersecurity, they are thinking about firewalls or backups. When we think about cybersecurity, we think first about people, second about processes, and then technology.
Mm.
Now, we go through, again, 250, 300 questions, and typically 60% of the answers are I don't know. And that's okay. Because if you don't know, if you have two-factor authentication enabled for your cloud account where you have your database, well, you should. So part of the plan is going to be go to Amazon, go to Google, go to whatever you're using and check it. And if you don't, set it up. And if you're using an SMS as two factor, change it. Go to an app or go to a key or go to a more secure way. Just asking those questions during that assessment process is going to create a lot of aha moments.
Awesome. That's a very great overview of where to get started. And so then the next question is, how should a company ensure that it is staying on track of its cyber goals? So I guess either how do you review the cybersecurity plan too? Like how do you know how often to check in on it, make sure that you're updating it, and make sure that you're on top of everything?
So, cybersecurity plan is no different than any other plan. A plan is something that's live, that changes as you grow your business and as you change, as you add stuff, as you develop new markets, develop new products. So the plan, it's a live document that has to change when anything changes in the organization. But it's not something that you want to be looking at the plan every single day, every single month, maybe quarterly, maybe twice a year. It all depends on how fast the company is changing, how new challenges you might be facing. But it has to be every time that you make a strategic decision for the company. We are going to try this in the States because in Canada it's working great. Let's try the States. Okay, how do I include cybersecurity in that? What else am I going to be exposed to if I go to the States, or if I try this other market, or if I launch this new widget? So every time that there is any strategic discussion about the future of the company is when you should talk about cybersecurity. And if you detect that there's something that should be done, then you need to include it in the plan.
Okay, perfect. So just make sure it's somewhere on your calendar so that you're remembering to stay on top of it would probably be a good little hack if you do it maybe quarterly to start and see if that's even necessary.
Okay,
And
but
then,
that's how often you change it. A
okay,
plan a plan is something that you should look at quite often. So if you
right.
have a plan and you say, I'm going to start training my users against social engineering in a month's time, someone should be accountable in order to start doing that. And
Mhm.
then in 2 months, we are going to start sending phishing simulations. In 3 months, we are going to start doing vulnerability assessments. If that's in the plan, but nobody's accountable for the plan, then
Yeah, that's a good tip too. Somebody needs to be accountable to it. There needs to be someone whose role that's built into
yeah.
so that
Mhm.
it doesn't get forgotten. And then the next one would be, what is the most common type of cyber attack that we should be on the lookout for?
100% social engineering, 100% the users. As I mentioned during the presentation, the technology stack or the cybersecurity protection on technology has grown exponentially in the last 15 years. Like today, systems, applications, they are significantly more protected than what they were before. But the gap with the human side is each time bigger and bigger. So uh, you might be implementing an extremely sophisticated machine learning AI firewall to protect any kind of attacks. But again, if Joe from accounting clicks on the phishing email, that might be it. So definitely social engineering, definitely helping your people protect your company. And even if it is just you, even if it is just a solopreneur, do some learning on social engineering. Check on YouTube. Like there are a lot of free resources, there are a lot of paid tools. Also, if you have to do it for compliance, but get familiar with the techniques that criminals and social engineering, let's say, experts are using to try to get you to click on an email or to give information over the phone or to disclose information or to enter your credentials in a fake website. So 100% is social engineering, 100% the people.
Okay. And then worst case scenario, you get breached. So what is the best course of action? And should you be disclosing it? Do you announce it publicly? Do you tell your clients? Do you keep it under wraps? I guess sort of what's the best approach there?
That's a great question, and I'm no lawyer, but I'm going to give my best understanding of it. If you are going through a breach, you should check your incident response plan. That means that you did some planning, and you have a guide on how to take care of this. So when you are preparing your incident response plan, typically you will ask your lawyer, what do I have to do? What am I accountable for? What kind of information should I send to those that information might be leaked? So all of that is part of building your incident response plan. If you don't have an incident response plan, the first thing that you should do if you do get breached is first, don't panic. Second, contact immediately specialists in either forensics or incident response. We don't do any kind of that. We don't do any incident response because we believe that by doing things right in the beginning, you shouldn't get to that point. Of course, there are a lot of breaches, and when that happens, you need to have the experts looking into what's happening in the network, what's the evidence, what could have been leaked. So, should you be disclosing it 100%? But again, this is not legal opinion. This is something that you should check. But simply by following RCMP's tips on that,
Mhm.
any kind of breach, it's a crime. And you should be reporting at least to RCMP. And
Mm.
depending on your industry, depending on your terms and conditions with your users, you should be disclaiming it to your vendors, your users, your investors, your partners. Like, again, no legal advice, but yes, you should be disclosing it based on your plan. So don't get there, don't get to that situation without a plan. So you have the opportunity to know what to do because eventually it's going to happen to many of us. And when it
Right.
happens, you need to be prepared.
Okay. Great advice. And then I think we probably have time for about one more. So, someone is asking, as someone who is a business intelligence analyst, I work with data. I also help engineer a company's CRM. Would you recommend being certified or trained in cybersecurity?
That's a very specific question. I would say yes, 100%. I recommend everyone to have training in cybersecurity. What kind of training? It depends. If you're an end user, the training that you may need could be provided by your employer. This is the typical security awareness training videos and phishing emails and all of that. So everyone should be receiving some kind of training from their employer, from their association, etc. And that's called basic security awareness training. Now he or she are asking about certified, and that is the certification is not going to get you to make you better at cybersecurity. It's just showing that you were able to pass the exam. So the important part here is what you can learn and how what you learn can actually help you prevent an incident. So if you're a business intelligence analyst, I would suggest do your certifications in your area of expertise, but get the training on cybersecurity. At least get basic training. If you want to really understand the more technical piece, yes, but I just was looking at some information online, and there are approximately 520 different certifications just in cybersecurity. 520. And you can spend as little as 250 US dollars for a certification, all the way up to $25,000 for a certification. So, if you are thinking about training and if you are thinking about certifications, you need to make sure that you know what you be trained on, because again, there are many different paths in training and education within cybersecurity. For example, in my case, my background is in marketing. I'm not technical. I love to play with networks and stuff, but I'm not technical. I'm not an engineer. But I love the social engineering side. So when I started
Right.
working on training and certification, I started looking into human risk management and security awareness training. And just on that, there are 15 different certifications,
Wow.
just on that. So again, the answer is yes, trained, certified, depending if you can get it paid by the company because it is expensive, and if that's going to add value to the company and to you in the future, 100%.
Okay, wonderful. It sort of reminds me of like any kind of risk management, like getting CPR. if you take your CPR course and you know how to administer it, you don't need to become a full doctor and do all the training, but even a little bit of knowledge is always helpful in case of an emergency. So
Yep.
absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Hernan. That was a very insightful presentation. Thank you for everybody who attended the Tech Mashup. I hope you have some takeaways, or at least you've started to now think about cybersecurity at work and in your personal life, and how important it might be to have that plan in place just in case, or like Hernan said, when something goes wrong, because it's most likely some sort of breach will eventually happen. So that concludes our formal program for today. You're now going to be transported back to your tables. Feel free to stay and network and mingle. We will be keeping the floor open for about another half an hour. So if you wanted to pop over and socialize with each other, you're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Thank you.